Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a little bit of an extra video where I'm just going to be talking about motorbikes, and only very quickly. I referenced this video that I'd watched it in my hits and losses video this morning. I just thought I'd show it to you. Not this video. This video is yet another one showing destruction of Russian motorcyclists as they attack. Here, Birds of Madyar group destroyed a group of Russian assault motorcyclists on the northern front using FPV drones. Assault motorcyclists were here driving in, well, two pairs were taken out by the drones as they tried to push forward, and you can see, the drones, taking them out, the FPV drones, seeing from their own point of view, and then from the spotter drone as well. And I could show you countless videos of Russian motorcyclists being hit. They are using these motorcycles to do these quick attacks, and they do have a positive effect there as an advantage for the Russians using these, even though I have said before, I think they started using motorcycles because they had to. They were running out of traditional combat assets like APCs and infantry fighting vehicles, largely across the front line and in certain areas particularly, and so they started using things like quads, golf buggies, motorcycles, and then they realized actually there was an advantage to using these. So you have fewer people per vehicle, particularly with the motorcycles. You have one or two people on the back of the motorcycles rather than 20 people on top of an APC. And in an APC, you have 20 people on 20 motorcycles, for example, and then that becomes much more difficult to stop the attack, because instead of like one shell or one ATGM or one FPV or several FPVs hitting that single vehicle and taking out the ability for these 20 people to move, you have to hit 20 motorcycles, and that becomes difficult. They don't trigger mines as much, although they do trigger mines, we've seen that, but not as much. Indeed, I've seen a motorcycle with a trailer on the back go over a bunch of mines and trigger the mines, but it's going so quickly that the mine doesn't blow up the motorcycle, and it triggers like 2 or 3 mines. So yeah, there are advantages to using these. They're quick. You can get to certain places. You can use the first motorbike to go over concertina wire, and then use that as a ramp for the other motorcycles to then drive over that first motorcycle, so you can get through things like concertina wire, so on and so forth. And the Russians have realized that there is an advantage to using these motorcycle attacks, to the point where they are now training on motorcycles. They are training units to do motorcycle attacks, and I'm going to show you a video that illustrates this. And we also know that the Ukrainians have picked up on the advantages conveyed by these motorcycle usages, and they've started training their own assault troops on motorcycles. And this is the modern cavalry, right? War Translated says one of Russia's training grounds has been set up specifically for combat biker units. Separate courses are held for logistics riders and so-called dragoon assault bikers. It really is the modern cavalry. So here you look at this purpose-built training area for motorcycle teams. And I'm going to mute it because of copyright issues for music and whatnot. So here we have logistics teams, and it's quite high quality film, this. So this is definitely a PR film, but it's clear that this facility exists. Here you have them dropping off water and whatnot, and using smoke off the back of their bikes as well to disguise probably not the person at the front, but the people behind, maybe in the activity they're doing. Here we have them riding through sort of shallow ponds or areas of water, and over difficult terrain, logs and tires and whatnot, using the bikes as a protection behind which they can shoot from and release smoke, all sorts. So this is all fairly standard sort of training, but it shows that they are serious about motorcycles. And of course, motorcycles are cheaper to provide than building or refurbishing infantry fighting vehicles and APCs. We've got quads where you can have someone sat on the back with a machine gun, heavy machine gun, as you can see there, or whatever. There are quite a few options that you can have here. So there you go. It's easy. I think it's probably too easy to criticize the Russians when they do come up with some of these adaptations. And you think that's desperate, that looks pathetic, or that looks completely suboptimal. But it's not always the case, and actually quite often what they do, and we can talk about this in terms of the cope cages and the ridiculous cope cages at the beginning of the war were ridiculous because they were building cope cages to protect their vehicles from ATGMs, and some of these top-down ATGMs, like a bit of wire makes absolutely bugger all difference to whether that thing's going to blow the turret off a tank, right? Maybe you can protect from some of the weaker RPGs or something like that. But then when you started getting these drones just smashing into these vehicles, the cope cages actually came into their own, and now the Ukrainians and the Russians both have elaborate cope cages and Mad Max style furnishings, if you like, to their vehicles. And they do to some degree work, not all the time, but they are going to protect to some degree. Otherwise they wouldn't have them. It's, these are functional, and they maintain because they do provide a function. You can talk about memetics and the idea that ideas prevail when they have functional utility. So motorbikes have functional utility, and that's why they're using them, and that's why they're training on them, and you'd expect the Ukrainians to be doing that as well. But anyway, I just thought it was a good indication that the Russians are serious about motorcycles. You probably see them less from the Ukrainians because the Ukrainians attack less. These aren't going to be defensive. They might have a defensive utility. This is about attacking or supplying, as you heard there, logistics, training for these guys to deliver stuff. We know that drones are used very often for that, both UGVs and UAVs, unmanned ground vehicles and unmanned aerial vehicles. They will deliver water and food and supplies to these troops and also get them out on stretchers and whatnot. But also motorcycles are useful, and quads too, and buggies and so on and so forth. Anyway, let me know what you think. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.